Alright. So my career choice was to be an author, because I've always wanted to do that. And a lot of people think that an author is just someone who sits on their couch all day in their underwears eating Cheetos and typing up their new books. But there's a lot more to it than you think. For example, authors always look at, have you ever looked at an image and asked yourself, what's going on here? I will give you guys an amount of time to think about the questions here on this picture. Raise your hand when you have one. And I also have candy to throw at you, so projectiles. Yes, Hannah.
He's a homeless boy in the rain, and he's just found a homeless cat.
Nice. Nice catch, Hannah.
Very. Yes.
Trying to get the cat to come to him so he can have a friend.
All right. Yes. Oh, sorry. Forgot. Projectiles. Yeah. Anyone else on different questions? Think of what's the story here and what's happening and why is this cat alone in the rain? Yes.
The cat was abandoned. Like, they were both orphans, and they're friends now because they know each other's pain.
All right.
Nice catch.
Okay, so everyone's answered almost every question. But does anybody have any answer to the one about the cat? Yes?
The cat's alone in the rain because it ran away.
All right. There we go. Okay, and I'm just gonna throw this last piece because. Okay. My job as an author is to ask these questions. I've always been known to ask odd questions that there seems to be no answers to. Like, seriously, it gets annoying after a while. But, my job as I do this every day for my job. And those are very good answers. And the correct answer is, there are no correct answers. Why do you think I was throwing candy, everyone? But, yeah. The original choices that I had for an occupation was an author, an actor, and a scriptwriter. Because, of course, I've always wanted to be an author because I've always been known to be really creative and have a giant imagination. Sometimes it got me in trouble. Sometimes a lot. And an actor, I have acted in plays before. And it has been very fun and very fun to do. And a scriptwriter, it's basically the same as an author, except you actually get recognized. Woo. But my choices had an opportunity cost. Now that I chose to be an author, I may or may not become an actor or a scriptwriter. Now, some trade-offs I had to take was I didn't want to get a sports car or something to be cool for 2 seconds. So I'm going to buy a used car so that I don't have to pay a bunch of money. And I gave up the expensive cost of a house for an apartment. Because, let's be real here, I'm not going to have a spouse anytime soon. And probably not any kids. Because you know kids these days. And it's also way less money, and it takes a lot less money to heat and cool and all that jazz. Being an author is unlike any other job you can have. It requires creativity. Can't be taught. Can't learn it in class. You just have to have it. Unless you're going to be one of those really boring people who writes nonfiction. That's not fun. Some good incentives to here is that you get to be creative every day of your job. Your job is to be creative. to write your own worlds, to write your own adventures, to write people to face these adventures, to make readers cry and wet the books, or something. Depends on what writer you are. It's also very helpful to other people if it has a good message so that people know what it is. And here's my favorite one. The sky is the limit. Your imagination is the limit. Your imagination can be infinite. One of the biggest things you need to be an author is an imagination that dwarfs a blue lamp. I'm not exaggerating. But some of the bad things you have to deal with when you're an author is that the editors might change your story quite a bit and they might try to push you around. Knowing me, ain't nobody got time for that. So, and it also has inconsistent projects. You could be working on one book and then working on another, and there's just no day is the same. And also you sell. When you make money as you sell. And it depends on how good your book is, how much word is getting out, and several different factors. Now on to the icky stuff. This is my budget. Bask in its glory. But my salary is near like, my monthly salary is around like $40,000 roughly. And my monthly salary is like $36,000, and for all these expenses, I still have some money in my pocket to go bowling or something. So, as you can see, some of this isn't done, but was that right? So, one of the biggest things here is I am not paying for a college. Because you don't need to go to a college to be a writer. No one can teach you how to be creative. And so my discretionary is about like $10 or something. I don't know. Presentation screwing everything up. Yeah. And my toiletries cost a lot less than normal. Mostly because I don't think I'm going to wear makeup or be fabulous or something like that. And I also am probably not going to pay for perfume or any of those things. So yeah. And goodbye, budget. Here is my pie chart. Isn't it delicious looking? No? Okay. So my housing is the biggest cost I have. Which is surprising because, well, you know, taxes! But, like, taxes are still the second best, so good job, government. Woo. And my discretionary is $150 because there's a lot of things I'm not doing. Like, I'm probably not going to get a pet, or maybe like a pet rock with a USB in it or something. My transportation probably won't cost that much because if you're an author, you don't really need to drive anywhere except for like to get groceries or something like that. Because most of the time you're sitting in your house going, and utilities, yes, I want Wi-Fi. Oh my goodness, such a surprise. But yeah. On to some other things. This is my letter of application to Scholastic DM. And according to this, in the future I'm an intern at Square Enix, which, trust me, that's wishful thinking. Worked in a library for like authors' visits, activities, and so on and so forth. And it actually lists a couple books I'm working on, like How to Save a Life, Lost in Wolfsbane, and A Cat's Tale. You should guess what A Cat's Tale was inspired from previous information here. And yeah. And this is my resume, aka bragging to bosses. Here I just listed my references. There's only one person I know who works at Square Enix, so the guy who owns the Kingdom Hearts and stuff, it's probably going way over all of your heads. But also a made-up person from the library. And so, yeah. And it's also just Scholastic. Actually, Scholastic was probably not a good idea considering my serious main character abuse problem. have such sad backstories. And my articles that I used were looking over the author's shoulder and tips on writing from other authors. Looking over the writer's shoulder talks about how when the author starts writing, it's all random and it's slowly just put together. They pick out a main character, they pick out what they are, they pick out the villain. Sometimes the villain, who doesn't turn out to be one, plot twists. And tips on writing, it was just a bunch of tips from authors that had worked before. For example, one of them was like, if you're going to work on a computer, turn off the internet so you're not tempted to go on the YouTubes and watch the next Markiplier or PewDiePie video, and so that you don't end up destroying your brain and wasting time. And here are the links I used. Most of them are just author quotes about how you can write, inspirational things. And yes, look at this. It's so interesting to look at. It's beautiful. And this is an image from the story I'm writing that was inspired from that picture I showed you before. And this is somewhat like the boy you saw before. And yes, and I made it myself. I know it looks bad. And I'm going to call it The Cat's Tail. Don't ever forget, if you want to be an author, no one can write the stories you want to write. Because no one else sees the world the way you do. No one sees the conflicts. No one sees how you see people except you. So no one else can tell the stories you do. And that is my presentation. Good night.